everybody, this is Sean of Raw Select Music, and as you can tell, I've got a slightly different camera angle for today. So, ooh, fancy. But actually, today I wanted to do a recent record pickups with a little bit of a twist. I've mentioned it before in previous videos that if you do a little bit of digging around Amazon, you can actually find a fair bit of vinyl. And recently, I haven't done any big bulk orders, but through a wish list that I keep on Amazon, I've been keeping track on a bunch of records for a long period of time. And for whatever reason, and I can never really quite explain why, prices vary all over the place. And sometimes a record will shoot up in price, and then in other instances, the price of a record will drop considerably. And it's usually around those times when the prices drop, like pretty dramatically into the holy shit, that is really, really cheap range. That's when I grab those records. And all the stuff that I've got here today, well, actually, save this record, I picked up on Amazon for a relatively decent price. And I thought I'd go over some of the records that I've grabbed recently and, you know, as always, do what I usually do. Share some really good underground music with you. And actually, this first record that I'm going to talk about is a perfect example of being patient on Amazon. Because this was a record that I was really, really interested in for a long time. But the price of the record, especially what it was going for on Amazon, was way more than I wanted to pay for a record that I was kind of sure that I would like, but not 100% sure, and it didn't feel all that essential to me. It certainly didn't feel like it was all that essential to pick up on vinyl. And that record is this guy right here. This is Elles' Lead Poison. This is his long-delayed Kickstarter album that came out in 2016. This is the album that was delayed so many times that he actually had a lawsuit against him because he used Kickstarter money to fund the album, and then it took forever to come out. And the bits and pieces I've heard of it, I mean, this is Elles. It's lyrically amazing. It's got some solid underground beats on it. And I know part of the reason I was sort of reluctant about it for the longest time was due to the Dead End Hip Hop review of it. I don't know, their talk of the beats just really aren't doing it for them sort of got into my head. And that's sort of the reason that I held off on picking this record up for so long. But I finally bought it. It had dropped down from, I think it was like 3,700 yen, or about 37 bucks, and it dropped down 14 bucks on Amazon. And I thought, for 14 bucks, yeah, I'll give this album a shot. And I'm really looking forward to diving into this record and sharing my more in-depth thoughts on this record at a later time. But yeah, pro tip from Raw Select Music for today: if you've got a record that you're interested in, and you've got it on your wish list on Amazon, maybe not jump at it right away. Maybe give it some time because it may eventually drop in price. The reason I recommend ordering records through Amazon is that a lot of times records that are really, really hard to find on other websites or in other record stores will be out of stock for a long time, or they'll be on a long delivery period where it'll say maybe like 1 to 3 months, and then eventually it will just jump back into stock miraculously. And usually, from my understanding, they're trying to procure the record from somebody else so they can sell it to you. And this was a record that I had wanted for a long time, and finally, it just popped back into stock. They had one copy left, and the price, much like the Elles record, had dropped significantly. And that is Bad Bad Not Goods 3. Now, I haven't talked about it that much on this YouTube channel, but I have talked about it a bit on my WordPress blog, which, as always, go down into the description because all audio links for all the records that I talk about on this channel will be down in the description over there. Or go over to my Steemit if you're a blockchain guy. I'm not really a blockchain guy. Kind of a blockchain guy, but you know what I'm getting at. But if you're unfamiliar with who Bad Bad Not Good are, they're a trio from Toronto, I believe. And they make jazz-influenced music. And their way of playing jazz is really close to the general, I think, image that most people have of jazz. There's a lot of soloing. There's a lot of technical prowess. And yet, jazz for them is still, like, for a lot of people that sort of fall under the modern jazz tag, these guys take jazz and also pile on a bunch of other influences as well. To me, Four felt like more of a jazz album with other elements tacked onto it. This feels like a post-rock album with elements of jazz and elements of electronic music. Maybe even elements of hip hop. It is not a straightforward jazz album, and I think that's part of the reason that I love this record so much is because it's what I usually look for in music, in that you take a bunch of different genres, sort of put them together, and somehow you come up with something that's cohesive. I haven't listened to this album all the way through. I haven't given it like a full in-depth listen yet, but from what I've heard, I'm absolutely loving this. This is the perfect complement to Bad Bad Not Good's 4, and actually I'm hoping to do a compare and contrast review between 3 and 4, and maybe even Sour Soul if I'm feeling ambitious, and comparing and contrasting the 2 or 3 albums. So look forward to that, and if you have not picked this up, this is definitely one of the best records I've heard in a long time, and I'm sure it was one of the best records when it came out in 2014, and I'm really glad that I finally picked it up. Then this last guy that I picked up from Amazon is Detroit Swindle, the Circular EP. And I just picked it up because I wanted a house record. It was the only thing available. And I'm not, I don't know, this isn't like the most thrilling Detroit Swindle record, but it's still solid enough, and I definitely feel like I can use it in some house sets. And it you know, it's as like a lot of Detroit Swindle records are. It's a nice balance of listenable elements, and it's also got some dance floor elements to it too. So it sort of rides the line, which is usually what I look for when I look for a lot of house records. Not great, not the most amazing thing I've heard, but I still like this record a lot, and I think it's worth checking out. Maybe you might like it more than I do. So one of the things that I've been trying to do with my record collection, and I know that I'm sort of going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I will come back to the last recent record pickup. One of the things that I've been trying to do is trim the fat on my collection. Really get down to what I think are the absolute essential records, and really get rid of the stuff that, if I'm on the fence about it, really try to make sure if there's a reason that it's still around, and also just ditching the completely inessential records. And honestly, I mean, much like I think a lot of people's tastes do, they change over time. So stuff that you bought 5 or 6 years ago, you may not be listening to when you get older. So I ditched a bunch of records, and I was at a record store and digging through the jazz collection, was with my wife at the time, so I didn't really have a whole hell of a lot of time to dig through the records because, you know, I want to be a nice guy. But she thought it was really funny because I sold all these records, and I think it ended up being like about $30, which, yeah, another Sean pro tip of the day. You're never really going to make your money back unless you're selling privately. Selling to stores, you're never really going to get money back. But occasionally, I do get surprised. So, I was digging through the jazz section, and I saw a copy of Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, which is an album I've wanted for a long time, but because there's always a million other records that I want at the same time, I've always passed on it, because I know it's a record that I'm always going to come back to. But I wasn't seeing anything that was really blowing me away that day. And I was just finishing up through the jazz section, and I finally, at long last, came across this guy. This is a song from my father, the Horace Silver Quintet. I've wanted this record ever since I heard J-Rock talk about it on Giles Peterson's show from I think that was 2012 when he did Giles Peterson's show. And this record is everything that I had hoped for. I've been wanting to build up my jazz collection, be it soul funk, soul jazz, jazz funk, this is what I meant to say, and just straight jazz. And this record did not disappoint. If you're unfamiliar with Song for My Father, it's one of my favorite jazz tracks. It has an instantly recognizable riff, some amazing piano work, and quite honestly, it's like one of the most up-tempo, sort of in-between hard bop, post-bop, and soul jazz that you can get. It's up-tempo enough that you could actually probably fit it into a DJ set if you play your cards right. So I'm really happy to now have this in my collection, and it has definitely sort of inspired me to start filling out my jazz collection a little bit more. So, Sean's final pro tip of the day: don't hold on to records that you don't have to. I mean, you're probably going to take a loss on them regardless, but I am not of the mindset that you should hold on to and archive every single record that you have. If you don't need it anymore, if you're not listening to it, if you're not DJing with it, unless you're really just holding on to it for posterity's sake, get rid of it and really, try to get your collection down to the records that you really, really want. Because it's really, really easy, especially in the beginning and in the future and up until now, to end up buying a shit ton of records in bulk, only to discover a few years down the line that you never really wanted them in the first place. Or that maybe you just outgrew them. So that's going to be it for me today. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. Head over to my WordPress blog and my Steemit blog, because that's where I will put all the music links so you can check out the records that I talked about today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you buy records off of Amazon? Maybe I'm the only one who does this, but I'm sure I can't possibly be. And let me know what was the craziest find you found on Amazon, because you'd be surprised. There's some real gems out there, and if you play your cards right, you can find them for a decent price, much like I did for this Elles record. One of these days I'll get into the world of buying and selling on Discogs, but as of right now, that just takes too much time, and I've got other shit to do. Thanks as always for watching. One more quick thing. I did finish a new not recent record. What the hell am I talking about? New Raw Select Radio. So head over to Mixcloud and you can check it out for yourself. I am still working on trying to get up a Dropbox so people can actually download my mixes so you don't have to stream it, because I know for some people, much like myself, I prefer having the MP3 and being able to listen to it at my leisure, and I'm not a particularly big fan of using my data on my phone to stream shit. So hopefully I'll get that worked out in the future. I am also considering in the future getting my Raw Select radios up on iTunes. But I'm still a little bit reluctant to do that just because I'm not entirely sure what the copyright situation is with iTunes, and I'm not looking to get sued. Really not. But that's going to be it for me today. Thanks as always. I know I've already said that, but I will try to get you guys out another video next week. So until then, thanks as always. Peace.